few months ago, a congregant who I know pretty well asked to come to speak to me. We've been fortunate to share numerous joyous occasions and also some sad ones over the past 10 years. And I've come to know his family too. I truly like and admire him. And he came into my office, and he sat down, and he proceeded to share everything that was on his mind about the state of the Jewish world. He spoke about his anger and his disappointment and his despair for the future. He's not a long-winded person, but that day he sat on my couch and spoke for nearly 30 minutes without stopping. And I just listened. And when he had said everything that he wanted to share, I paused and I considered how I might respond. So I asked him, "Do you want me to confirm your worst fears? Or do you want me to help you feel better?" And later in the summer, I had a similar experience. A friend started down the same path, sharing everything that was on his mind, all of his fears and concerns about the Jewish world. And so I asked him, and I'll ask all of you, do you want me to confirm your worst fears? Or do you want me to help you feel better? My friend raised both his arms. Yes, we enter the Jewish year, 5785, with deep anxiety about what it means to be a Jew and about the Jewish future. Our world feels like a very narrow bridge. Kol ha'olam kulo gesher tsar me'od. And we are trying our very best not to be afraid. So we've come here on this most significant of Jewish days to be together, side by side, to sit with others who've been through the same trauma and who know just what we're feeling, in the hope of finding some bit of wisdom and clarity. We have lived through a cataclysm of our Jewish world. We wish we could go back to a year ago. Hashivenu Adonai elecha v'nashuva chadesh yameinu kekedem, we pray. God, make this year as if it had never happened. God, bring us back to a simpler time. We wish that we could unsee what we have seen and that we could unknow what we now know. October 7th is not only a day whose horrors will haunt our Jewish lifetimes, it is the fulcrum upon which our entire Jewish existence pivots. In our Jewish lives, there's everything before October 7th and everything after, and we are still trying to sort out that after. The ongoing nightmare of our hostages, the endless war in Gaza, now the military campaign against Hezbollah, and the implications of all of this for our Jewish lives here in the U.S. I could stand here all day and rehash all the trauma of the past year and justify all the fear that we feel because we have lost so much. But I don't want to spend all day having the "how did we get here" conversation. You know, the conversation in which we trace the path that brought us campus protests and anti-Zionism and the false allegation that Jews are apartheid-loving colonialists and abandonment by social justice allies and workplace ostracism and so much more. I know you've had conversations about all of this with family and friends throughout the year, and many of you have had those conversations with me as well. What I see in those conversations is a deep emotional struggle, an inability to comprehend how all of this could happen. Make no mistake. We have experienced a profound shift in the essential nature of what it means to be Jewish. And so we enter this Rosh Hashanah feeling angry and sad and lost. We feel a deep sadness for the horrific plight of our hostages. We are sad that our need to defend Jewish lives requires the shedding of blood. We are sad that we see the state of Israel merely pursuing security and peace for its citizens, while the world sees war crimes. We felt acutely that October 7th happened to us, and we were so sad when our neighbors just didn't get it. We're sad that in certain circles or certain locations, we feel the need to hide our Jewish identity. I'm sad that I have to explain to my young children why there's a war in Israel. And I know that many of you are sad that you have to debate with your slightly older children Israel's need to defend itself or Israel's right to exist. We are sad that being Jewish now carries a heaviness that it never carried before. And we're sad because of what Yehuda Kurtzer calls ethical loneliness. The feeling that we're alone in our pain and that there's no one to console us. And friends, we are angry too. We are angry that our social justice allies, for whom we showed up again and again, not because we expected some quid pro quo one day, but because we knew the cause was just, have not shown up for us in our time of need. We're angry at those who ostracize and even target our kids on college campuses. We're angry at friends who think that Zionism is a dirty word. We're angry that human rights organizations refuse to recognize violations against Jews. We're angry that we had to spend so much of this year defending or justifying the waging of a just war. We're angry that Jews have now been perversely portrayed as oppressors and perpetrators, and that no one seems to be able to see us as victims. We're angry that we have been thrust back into an era of Jewish life that we thought we had left long ago. We are angry because we did not deserve any of this. And most of all, we are angry because this beautiful treasure that we love, this essential aspect of who we are, our Jewish identity, of which we feel so proud and so joyful, has been unalterably changed. This is what it feels like to be a Jew in the world right now. And so today we just want to be together with other Jews, others who know how we feel. We want to grieve and mourn these traumas that we've suffered. And we want to somehow find a way forward together in a time when the waters are so very troubled. The traumas of the past year have left us in an uncertain present and with profound questions about the future. Yehuda Kurtzer puts it this way: some of the basic certainties upon which we have based our Jewish lives have been shattered. The first certainty: Throughout our Jewish lives, we have believed that the state of Israel is fundamentally secure. Even as we were aware of the threats it faced in every direction, we were certain about the strength of Israel's military and the depth of its intelligence services and the integrity of its leadership, even if we might not have agreed with every decision. And then in February, on our congregation's mission to Israel, I visited the Nova Festival site. How could it be that defenseless Jews were hunted down and slaughtered in the state of Israel? This was never supposed to happen again. Thanks to Zionism, after 2,000 years of persecution and after pogroms and after the Holocaust, we returned to our homeland, reclaimed power, and determined that we would henceforth control our own destiny. As I stood there at the Nova Memorial, I felt a despair, a dread that I had only experienced when visiting the death camps of Europe. I felt like I had been dragged back in time to an earlier era of our history. I felt acutely that my own existence and that of my children ultimately hangs by a very slender thread, simply because we are Jews. I felt our existential vulnerability in the world as I never had before. The bridge never felt more narrow. And the second certainty, throughout our lives, we have believed that to be a Jew in America is to be fundamentally safe. In fact, America has been the safest place in all of history for Jews to live, and it remains so today. But now we wonder whether we will ever again feel fully secure and fully accepted here. The campus protests are perhaps the best example of our shattered certainties, because their impact goes beyond the delegitimization of Israel and the blatant anti-Semitism and the targeting of Jewish students and the refusal to afford Jewish students the same basic protections that other groups receive. For us, acceptance into elite universities was a sign of our acceptance into American society as a whole. Admission was not only a symbol of our success, but an assurance of our security. And now the very institutions that helped us feel so very at home here are the same institutions that have made us feel unsafe. Many of us have experienced similar patterns in our chosen professional fields or in social justice work that's so important to us. We fear that the golden age of American Jewry, an unprecedented era of security and flourishing when we need not have worried about any of this, might be ending. All of a sudden, it's tempting to see every incident as a threat. And we wonder whether the home that we love has really been a home for us all along. I wish I could tell you that there was a magic bullet for all of this. But there is no legislation, there is no political candidate, there is no national or international organization, there is no secular institution that will solve this. But I want to share with you a story. Rabbi David Ellenson was the intellectual powerhouse of Reform Judaism and a beloved mensch. He was the most respected of rabbinic elders. And as president of Hebrew Union College, he is the one who physically laid his hands upon my shoulders and made me a rabbi. Sadly, Rabbi Ellenson passed away this December. I went to his shiva, and as I gathered with other rabbi friends and we spoke, we began to recall the many teachers and mentors of ours who have now passed away or who recently retired. I didn't turn to Rabbi Ellenson often, but I knew he was there, and that whenever I needed, he would take my call and offer guidance and wisdom and support. And now here we were at his shiva, just 2 months after October 7th, in the midst of the greatest crisis of our Jewish lifetimes. And I wondered, who were we, who was I to turn to? I felt bereft. And then I looked around the room, as I do today, and I realize now it's us. There's no one else. No one is coming to save us. It is up to us. I don't have all the answers. No one does. But the thing is, each of us has a bit of an answer. Who will hold our people together? Who will rebuild certainties upon which we can firmly stand? Who will be that bridge from this traumatic year into the next chapter of Jewish life? It's us. It's all of us. Moses was living as a lowly shepherd out in the wilderness. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, he noticed a bush that appeared to be on fire, and yet the bush was not consumed. And he said to himself, I must turn aside to see this great sight. And as Moses turns, the bush speaks to him. This is the moment on which his entire life, one might say all of Jewish history, turns. Moses' life is never the same. Friends, ask not to whom the bush speaks. It speaks to each of us. And I know that over the past year, so many of you have heard God's call, because so many of you have told me of your small but significant acts of Jewish pride and Jewish agency. A congregant told me how he spoke up for himself and the Jews within his Fortune 500 company when a colleague expressed anti-Zionist and anti-Semitic views. A college student told me about how she had the courage to speak productively with her roommate, who one day walked in wearing a keffiyeh. I have seen how you've passionately engaged with school district leadership or with the head of a private school. I've seen many of you speak to the deans and even the presidents of your universities or your child's institution. I've witnessed you redirect tzedakah from your alma mater to Jewish causes, including Temple Israel. Groups have come together here at Temple Israel and elsewhere to share pain and, more importantly, to take action together. You've led rallies for our hostages. You've attended marches and events in D.C., and you've made special trips to Israel to offer support and friendship. You've struggled and sometimes even succeeded in finding the right way at the right time to talk to your children and grandchildren about why Israel is important to you. I've heard many a bar or bat mitzvah speak movingly on this bima about what it means to be Jewish. I've heard parents share the same with their infants at a baby naming. The feeling of common mission and purpose that we all feel is inspiring. Our congregation is fuller and busier and larger and more vibrant than ever because so many of us are leaning into Jewish identity with pride and with purpose. So let us take heart in the recognition that the trauma of the past year has bound the world's two major Jewish communities, Israel and the United States, together like never before. One thing we can be certain of now is our shared vulnerability and, more importantly, our shared destiny. So together, let us move forward into the world of October 8th. October 7th was aptly described as a pogrom, a word which for us is so loaded with historical memory and historical fear. But what we didn't have in the days of the pogroms is an army. Israel possesses an army that's capable of meeting the challenge of this moment. The operation in Lebanon has been planful and strategic and aided by the most sophisticated pinpoint intelligence. And it has restored our faith in the IDF and restored Israel's deterrence threat in the region. Israel is literally rebuilding the destroyed kibbutzim. And even in the face of missile attacks, and in the face of terror rampages and a second war, the state of Israel reminds us that we as a people are resilient and strong and brave and powerful. And I see the same strength and resilience here in America as we wear our chais or our Magen Davids, as we wear our hostage necklaces, or as we intone to one another Am Yisrael Chai. And so let's take it a step further. Let's reassert our power here in America. Yes, we have influence and we have resources and we will use them. And from my experience in the interfaith world, we have friends, many more than we realize. Friends, ask not to whom the bush speaks. It speaks to each of us. There are those who say that religion was invented as a response to fear. Not an answer, mind you, because answers may not always be possible, but a response, a pathway, a way of living that enables us to create a cogent and full life, and that helps us feel less afraid. Rabbi Tamar Elad Applebaum reminds us that before creation, the words that we read in the Torah, the world was tohu vavohu. Its essential nature is chaos. And God creates order out of chaos, and then God plants a tree, the tree of life, at the edge of the abyss. And this is the essential Jewish act, to cultivate life even at the edge of the abyss. That's where we have stood much of this year, at the edge of the abyss. At times, the chaos and troubled waters have seemed overwhelming. But as this new year opens, let us try to put one foot in front of the other and cross that very narrow bridge. Let us dance once again. Let us help one another not be afraid. And let us cultivate life. K'nei Yeh Ratzon. May it be so.